Hey guys, welcome to today's video. Our essential question is, what were the key issues and major events of Jimmy Carter's presidency? So I've got the slides, you've got the guided notes. Follow along with me, adding to your notes as we go, starting with our essential question on the top box. But today we are focused all on this man. This is Jimmy Carter. He was president from 1977 to 1981, and he was a Democrat. So we're starting our unit on the 1980s, and we want to start that unit by figuring out where we are at the start of the 80s, what's going on in the country, and why do people reject this man when he runs for a second term as president? Why do we reject him and vote for Ronald Reagan, the Republican candidate, instead? So the first major event we're going to look at during Carter's presidency is the energy crisis. So the energy crisis is when we have an oil shortage, so not enough gasoline, right, to power our cars. And this is caused by our need and our reliance on foreign oil. Right? We don't have a lot of natural oil reserves in this country, so we need to buy that oil from countries like mostly in the Middle East that have tons of oil for sale, and we rely on them to power all of our cars, right? So we can drive around and get to where we need to be. So there is a shortage at this time. So you see this person here, he owns a gas station and he is letting everybody know with a sign that, hey, he doesn't have any gas to sell. They are out. So why, right? Why is there all of a sudden not enough oil or gasoline for everybody to get to where they need to go? And the reason was this entity, this organization called OPEC, which stands for the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. So a bunch of countries that export or sell petroleum or gasoline. They ban or embargo, that's a vocab word I would be familiar with. Embargo means to ban. They ban oil to the US. They don't like what we've been doing. They don't think we deserve their oil. So they say, you know what, we're not going to sell you any. And so the result, of course, is the price increases. Right? If you ban something, the little amount that is left becomes really, really expensive. So not only was like gasoline for your cars really expensive, but even things like the price of food actually increased. Because if you think about it, right, most of us buy food from a grocery store. That food comes to us in big trucks, right? It's transported all over the world. Well, those trucks need to fill up their tanks with gasoline. So the consumer, even just at the grocery store, is paying extra because of the embargo. This leads me to our second box, and that is right now, the economy sucks. It is not in a good place. And the reason for that is a vocab word here in bold and underlined called stagflation. And so that's when two things get too high. When unemployment gets too high and when our prices get too high, we experience something called stagflation. So inflation is the rising of prices. So just like our food gets more expensive, right? All of our prices are getting really high up there. There's not enough jobs to go around, and that combination causes stagflation, which leads to our economy being really, really poor. Okay, something a little bit more positive. We just hit kind of two negatives about Carter's presidency. But something a bit more positive was called the Camp David Accords. That was a pretty major event that Carter was responsible for. And it was this agreement created between two countries, between Egypt and Israel, who had been fighting wars for about 30 years. And so the Camp David Accords brought both of those people and their leaders together. And they came up with an agreement to stop the fighting. And Carter was able to negotiate those two to agree not to, shoot and be killing each other as they had been for 30 years. So that was a major diplomatic achievement. Carter also creates our Department of Energy, which is an agency that still exists today that helps protect our environment. So those of you that said, hey, environmental issues, that's a big issue to me, we can credit Carter for giving the environment the attention it deserves. And that leads me with our last and final slide. The major event we're going to associate with the Carter presidency is the Iranian hostage crisis. If you joined us earlier in class, we previewed this together. But the hostage crisis was an event where Americans were actually held hostage by Iranian college students in the US Embassy in Tehran, in the capital of Iran. And so these Americans were held hostage in our government building in Iran for 444 days, right? Over a year of being held in a building against your will. Why, right? Why would they hold our people hostage? Well, we made a pretty giant error. We allowed the Shah of Iran, which is the name for their leader, we allowed the Shah into our country to receive medical treatment. He had cancer. He was dying of cancer. And initially, we did not let him in. Initially, we did not allow him to come in, but Carter changed his mind and let him into the country for medical treatment. And this really made the Iranians mad at us because this is a man, the Shah, this was a man who had been really harming his own people. Iranians were hungry, they were starving. He was taking all of the money for himself, being very extravagant. He was a ruthless dictator, right? This was a person hated by his own people, and we let him in to get treatment for healthcare. And they wanted him back, right? They wanted to try him and probably like publicly, execute him in the streets, right? This was not a popular person. And so that sort of that started the hostage situation. And so Iran decided, they were very mad at Carter. They weren't going to give these hostages back, and so they kept these people for 444 days. And that ended up really being the turning point for his presidency. We expect our president not to allow things like that to happen. So when Carter was unable, weeks, months, even over a year later, to get our Americans home, that was kind of it for him, and that destroyed the presidency of Jimmy Carter. And so in a minute, as you're finishing up your notes, we're going to look a little bit more into this event. Obviously, it lasted a year, right? So there's lots to dig into. I'm going to have y'all do your document-based question. So when you're done with this set of notes, take a look at the board. There's going to be some additional instructions on how to get started with the next activity. But thanks for listening. That's the end of our notes for today.